Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the beautiful Monza Grand Prix circuit here in the Fanatec Arena as SRO Esports embarks on a brand new adventure. That's right, we're here for the very first SRO Esports Sim Pro Series, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined by not one, but two legends of broadcasting alongside me. So my name's Paul Jeffrey. In the box is Ben Constanduris and the one and only Aris from Kunos. Ben, Aris, welcome to what is going to be an historic afternoon of racing.
Great to see the Fanatec Arena being back and used with professional sim racers, getting the very best out of our rigs here in the Fanatec Arena, and a lovely atmosphere in Monza, buzzing.
Yeah, and Aris, welcome to the commentary box today for your expert opinion and analysis. It's a big moment for SRO Competizione as well.
Oh, it is. It really is. And thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here live. I'm a little bit nervous.
Big question before we get started. Competizione? Did I get that right this time?
Competizione.
Competizione. Fantastic. So, we are here, as I say, for the very first round of the season. It's a brand new championship. And Ben, this is where we get professional esport drivers, works esport drivers, competing here in the Fanatec Arena.
Yeah, and taking them out of their familiarity of their rigs at home, of their rigs in their professional sim teams. We're putting them in the same equipment. Yes, they're using different cars, but they have to deal with the Fanatec rigs that we have here in the arena, set them up to make them feel as comfortable as possible. But of course, also our big faces on the big screens, the noises that we have around, changes the environment in which they're racing. And that pressure will show us different performances that we're used to seeing from the online series.
And I think you talked about environment, and I think, guys, it's really worth articulating to everybody at home. You can see over our shoulder, we've got some video that we'll show you in a moment of the arena, but we're in an arena, we've got crowds, we've got spectators, there's the broadcast, everybody watching at home, but we've got fans in the background. You can see now on the screen the arena being built. This is part, Ben, of the GT World Challenge powered by AWS. Paddock, it's not a bolt-on, it's not an afterthought, this is an integral part of the whole SRO complex of competition, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, from that VT, it does look like it's sitting in a car park on its own, but I assure you, by the end of this time-lapse, the teams start rolling in with their trucks and they start unloading their real cars into the garages around us. We are absolutely in the heart and epicenter of the Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS. It's a bit of a mouthful.
It is.
But we get used to it after a few years. And what that brings is the fact that these guys can go out and stand on the real-world grid after this race and watch the 3 hours of Monza. It brings fans from around the world who might not know about this SRO Competizione or this competition that love their real-world stuff. So it's a win-win from both sides.
And it adds some authenticity, Aris, doesn't it? That we've known each other for a long time, and sometimes it's been difficult maybe to articulate what sim racing is to the wider world, to real racing teams, but now we're in an entirely different environment altogether.
Absolutely, and you can see that through the years that we started doing this sport on site. Year after year, it has become more interesting and more important, and now we have people outside the arena waiting for the race. It's amazing.
Yeah. So let's have a look at our drivers entering this arena as we're about to begin. They're on track at the moment, so this was recorded a couple of hours ago, and these are the stars of SRO Esports competition, the Pro Sim Series that we've got going today. And you said, Ben, at the top of the show, they're using equipment that they're not necessarily used to. It's a new environment. It takes a lot, doesn't it, to become accustomed to that one in a competitive space.
But I tell you what, these guys are as professional as the real-world teams out there on the real-world grid. The way that they've come in and approached the whole process of the Fanatec Arena. For me, the most amazing thing is looking around at the colours that these guys are wearing. Yep. These are no longer kids in T-shirts and shorts. They've got massive brands on their shoulders. Some of them works real manufacturers of cars. And that is incredible, Aris, to see not just these guys as drivers, but then all the workings around them coming and using ACC as a way to compete.
Absolutely. It is amazing and incredible at the same time. The actual esport teams are collaborating very closely with the actual real teams to train the pro drivers and train themselves and the engineers it has become so complex and so professional. Amazing.
So on that topic, let's take this opportunity to have a look at who will be participating in this opening round as we introduce you to the drivers of the SRO Esports Pro Sim Series. So there we go, Danilo Sontero, Dennis Schoninger, again, two names that you will recognise very much from the world of esport competition. Then we've got David Tanitsa, Dar McCormack, Luca Lozio, Tobias Gronovold as well. There is Tobias, you see on your screen at this moment in time. Daniel Savini, another driver that has been successful in multiple online competition, and Bastian Richter taking part this weekend for the Mercedes AMG Esport team. We're looking at Arta Camara and Michael Romandinis as well, two drivers that we haven't seen much of, I think it's fair to say, for Michael's case. Gregor Schill, an established name in esport competition, expect him to be at the sharp end of the grid. Chris Harteveld, Darilo Amulo, and then Jordan Sherratt taking part for Ferrari, making his competitive debut in SRO for the Ferrari brand. Dominic Blyer, another driver, Williams Esports in a Mercedes, expect to do well alongside Luke Whitehead. Tobias Pfeffer, a driver that we've seen so much of in esports and SRO Esports over the last few years. Kamil Pavlovsky, another driver successful in many different brand championships. Mohamed Ali, Tristan Ballywinkle as well, a driver that we've not seen much of up to this point, so I'll be curious to see how he gets on. And this is the man that qualified on site here at Monza, so Leonardo Porco making his debut in this championship, qualified in the arena. Kieran Prendergrass that we just saw on screen there, and Matteo Sonotti. Ben and Aris, both of you know esports and sim racing. Maybe a lot of you watching at home and in the arena do as well. That's a stacked field of drivers and talent.
But for me, it's not just those racing driver names, those sim racing driver names, but it's the teams they represent. Lamborghini, Mercedes, Ferrari, those are just, and BMW, should I not forget. We've got some sim racing teams that we know well of. Jean Lacey Esports, VRS Coanda, Williams Esports, McLaren Veloce. These are huge names. Yep. Yes, we then have, and I'm really curious to see, some of the teams that have partnered with teams here. So Santalot, for instance, is a team that exists in the real world. I don't know if they've got a huge amount of presence in the sim racing world, but they certainly have decided to partner with a driver to allow them to be part of this series. And those smaller teams, also Brabham Esports, how will they get on versus these mammoths of the manufacturing car world?
And I think that actually goes back to yourself and Kunos, Aris, that the parallel between real and virtual is getting ever closer. In fact, before we come on to that one, let's just have a quick look at some of those drivers. They spoke to our media team earlier this weekend, so we'll have a quick look and a quick word with some of the drivers that are taking part on this grid.
My name is David Tanitsa. I'm Bastian Richter. You can call me Bastian.
I started sim racing simply because I have a passion of cars, like watching racing since probably 20 years now. And yeah, just got into it.
I'm from the United Kingdom and I live about 5 minutes from Brands Hatch.
Great to hear from the drivers in person. And Aris, I was just saying before we went into that bit of VT, the parallel between real and virtual is becoming ever smaller, and as Ben alluded to, real teams are leveraging their knowledge and leveraging esport teams' knowledge to help each other. That must be pretty much the utopia of what Kunos were looking for, surely.
I can tell you that the level of competitiveness of those drivers is only matched by the engagement of the manufacturers. They are so much trying to give extra support and feedback to make the cars as close to reality as possible and help their own drivers to get the best possible performance out of them. It's really unparalleled.
And we saw it, didn't we, Ben, in the GT Pro Series for professional real-world GT drivers yesterday. Teams are working hand in hand. They're seen as equals amongst each other now, aren't they?
Yeah, and having this particular series on site has only encouraged more of these teams that we are going to see racing today to be involved with those teams and those drivers from last night. I mean, some of them are, like Williams Esports, are putting together a setup, giving it to Rafael Marcello, and Marcello is then being told, no, you're not changing the setup. You change your driving style because we know this is fast and we know that you can win if you use this. And it's fascinating that that's now the way it goes. It's not the professional drivers going, oh no, teach me how. It's sim racers going, this is how you go fast, this is what you're doing, you need to adapt. And they are. And we saw last night a very, very professional racing from our professional drivers that perhaps we haven't seen in previous years. They're really starting to adapt because real-world championship points are scored in the virtual world last night. And in parallel, whenever the Fanatec Arena is in town, we're going to have one of these events as well across all of our 5 real-world Endurance Cup races.
Yep, so of course, as well as the teams working together in parallel and becoming involved in the championship, you at home can be involved as well. Join the comment section of our broadcast on Twitch, on YouTube. Drop us a social media message on hashtag SRO Esports. Any questions that you've got, we will try our very best to read them and answer them on broadcast. And let's put Arish under pressure. Let's see how well tuned he is to giving diplomatic answers. So fire those in and we'll try our very best over the course of the broadcast. And chaps, we're in qualification. It's only 15 minutes, and we've got 4 minutes and 53 seconds left on the clock. And just as we predicted, it's very tight indeed all the way through the field.
Only 4 laps completed by most of our competitors, so they're doing 1 lap and then bailing out and getting a reset and going back out onto circuit. So not a huge amount of actually competitive laps set, but these guys obviously have a huge amount of experience on this platform at home. They've had 2 hours practice this morning here on these rigs. I don't know if that really changes a huge amount. It'd be interesting to hear from some of our drivers how different it feels racing here versus racing at home. But ultimately, the platform is the same. The cars, well, are they the same? Do they feel the same, Aris? Because, of course, we've had an update the last couple of days on ACC, and from what I can understand, it all feels a bit different.
Yeah, we had a major update, especially on the physics and also the DLC of the new 2023 cars. And with the feedback that I get from the drivers is that they have a lot of work to do to find out all the performance secrets out of this update. But as you can see, they are doing already pretty well.
But it does mix it up, I think.
Yeah, well, it makes it exciting for us at home in the audience and here in the commentary box, because it is, I think I used this term yesterday, it's a step into the unknown for everybody. You can test. The drivers have had access to this build in advance of the public to prepare. But testing's one thing. In the heat of battle is a very different thing. And I personally am fascinated to see what impact that's going to have. Who's going to be strong over the stint? Who's going to start strong and fade? How important is qualification? And that's a good question, Ben, actually. How important is qualification at Monza?
I don't think it's very important if we were in the GT Pro race, because it's a bit chaotic. But when we're talking about hundredths of a second between all these drivers, it's very, very hard to gain a big advantage around here. There's not big braking zones necessarily. And so I think the grid is going to really set the rhythm for that start of the race. What I'm really curious about, as you mentioned, is the progress throughout a stint. Yeah, there's one thing going fast in 1 lap, but how the car develops across a stint is something I think that you guys at Kunos have worked hard on, and it's that end of the race that's very different to how it has been previously.
Absolutely. Tire management, fuel consumption, it plays a big role into the race, and towards the end of the stint, it's going to be definitely very important.
And how much of an impact, Aris, does it take out of the life it takes out of the car if you're in a fight, if you're following people through dirty air, you're showing your nose at the inside and you're moving around in the car maybe a little bit more than you would like to do in clean air? How big of an impact to the overall life expectancy of the tyres, for example, does that make?
This is a great question, and it's always a little bit of a doubt of what happens with professional sport drivers, because they are so focused on the absolute performance on a single lap. And sometimes you can see them doing those qualifying-like laps during the race, only to pay, the high price towards the end of the stint. And Monza being Monza, slipstream is very important. Following the cars is very important. We're going to see.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And Ben, 1 minute 35 left on the clock. We've got 1.2 seconds spread in the top 23.
Yes, but we've got 0.2 of a second spreading the top 6, and all 6 are Mercedes cars, and then there's a 0.2 of a second gap between the best non-Mercedes vehicle, which is David Tonizza, not in a Ferrari, by the way. You would associate and expect Tonizza be a Ferrari driver. He has moved to Lamborghini, and legitimate Lamborghini. We're not talking some pretend Lamborghini team. That is the Works Lamborghini team that have 3 entries here, and Tonizza leading that 7th position with Polowski behind him.
Very, very interestingly, the top 7 exactly mirrors what we saw in free practice. 6 AMG Mercedes, followed by Tanitsa leading the charge for Lamborghini. Now, that's going to be very interesting to see unfold, because the Lamborghini and the Mercedes, Barris, are 2 very different cars indeed, and have strengths and weaknesses, the polar opposites of each other.
Absolutely. One of the characteristics of Assetto Corsa Competizione is the extreme difference of character between the cars. And, you know, it's not just full lap time performance. You can see also the strategy from the teams. Mercedes is actually doing what they're doing in the real races, where they bring a full armada of cars and trying to dominate the whole grid. And this is it again.
And we love this kind of thing, Ben, don't we? It's, again, real and virtual, mirroring each other. It's more than just getting in the car and pedaling it as fast as you can. There's a whole industry behind it, and strategy and teams and people, spreadsheets, working things out, and it's absolutely fascinating from up here in the box at the very least. So,
qualifying's over.
there's a last few cars out on the racetrack. You can see on your screen where the checkered flag is showing next to their name. That's people who've completed their session and would no longer be eligible to set another time lap. The green marker next to them means they're still on track. They crossed the line before the checkered flag wave, so they are entitled to go out there and complete their time for their grid position. And at this moment in time, Bastian Richter is our provisional pole sitter from Dennis Schoninger in the AMG Mercedes. Can Kieran Pendergrass in the Brabham Esports livery car to Ferrari, the new Ferrari in ACC at that rounds the Michele Alboreto curve. Has he got enough in the tank? No, decides to bail. Oh no, he doesn't. It's continuing, taking the shortest run to the line. 19th to Pendergrass at this moment in time, moves up just one position as Dominic Blyer throws the car on to P2 for Williams Esports. Blyer at the very death disposes Dennis Schoninger from the front row with a great lap time.
Well, Richter was the man who'd got the fastest lap time. Gronveld went fastest, and Blyer then went faster again. Gronveld on a provisional pole over a 1/10 of a second faster than anybody else. So the kitchen sink being thrown at the end of this particular session. Gregor Schill still yet to finish a lap in his BMW from the BS Competition Works BMW M team, helping the Works BMW drivers of WRT and Rover Racing here. 7/10 of a second down though.
Oh, there we go, a little whittle for the last corner down pit lane, call it a day in qualifying. And this is, we spoke about it very briefly, but while we've got a few moments between now and the race beginning, it's worth talking about again. We say qualifying is not vital at a track where you can overtake, but staying out of trouble into T1 is. And if you've had a suboptimal, shall we say, we'll use some Ron speak for this one since we're a motor race, if you've had a suboptimal qualification session, there's an element of desperation there, isn't there, to try and use T1 to make up some positions. So, we've got a few minutes, 2 minutes 54 seconds until the race starts, chaps. Let's take a quick look at the grid in a few moments' time as everything just settle itself down. Any surprises there for either of you?
Well, you've got a Unicorns of Love 1-2. Yes, they're all Mercedes, but the UOL machines of Gronveld and Richter and Blyer, Blyer is part of, I don't see Blyer on my entry list.
Yeah, Dominic Blyer is running a little bit further down. I think he's representing Williams. Let me just find him on our entry list.
Yeah, that would
it's
make
always
sense.
Fun trying to find a name on a piece of paper when live
Yeah.
on air.
Oh,
There we
so
go,
he's
car number 5.
Oh, so that's interesting. He's entered as Williams Esports, not Mercedes AMG Williams Esports, because we've got Mercedes AMG Team Williams Esports. We've got also Mercedes AMG Esports Team Unicorns of Love. So that's Mercedes, 2 types of Mercedes for 2 different teams. But then we've got Williams Esports running a Mercedes, but not called a Mercedes, and Dominic Blyer is that. Hence why he's got a colourful Williams livery rather than more of a Mercedes livery. I still can't get my head around why this happens, especially with Williams and Mercedes. Because you have a Williams, a Mercedes, and a Mercedes Williams, and a Petronas Mercedes, which isn't a...
The longer you explain that, the less I understood it.
Did it turn off?
I feel knowledge dripping away from me.
Yeah.
It makes it complicated for us commentators, but the be-all and end-all is the drivers are representing the teams, and this is something worth mentioning as well, Ben and Harris. They're representing their team, but they're scoring points, just like in the GT Pro, for their team, not themselves. So they don't necessarily have to attend every single race. They can nominate another driver in that car, which is an interesting tactic as we're lining up for the qualification running order. And do you have specialist drivers per track, or would you normally have just a strong overall driver?
Oh, there are absolutely special drivers for specific tracks, and as a matter of fact, it's even special cars and track combinations. The Mercedes, we see them right now at the first, places of the grid, but I know for sure that they're using a setup that has quite a bit of high downforce, and they don't have the same top speed as the other cars. So it's going to be very interesting at the end of the straight on the start line to see if the other cars will be able to attack them for T1.
Right, so let us take a look at the qualification grid. Here you see on your screen now the times have been set. Car number 14 is on pole position. Now live timing's a little bit behind itself there, so I'm looking at it on the screen. There it is, Tobias Gronvold for the Unicorns of Love team. A very competitive driver, often at the front of the field, so expect big things from him in pole position. In second on the grid, we will have, in a moment's time, when we see that on our screen, it's such a tight qualifying force. You can see the cars, and Ben, we spoke about it already, the liveries are absolutely beautiful. Car 55, that is Darren McCormack for the Williams team that you see there. Lamborghini, the real race sponsorship on the side. That's the Works Lamborghini team that you see just running off the line. And 24 cars on Monza in GT3, heading towards a chicane that's narrow. The grid separated by a second and change. Predictions, gentlemen. Are we going to have drama?
I'm going to cry.
See, at this time, this is a tip for you, Harris, for you to commentary. You can hide behind the desk until T1's over and done with, and then just pop back up again when the dramas happen. I think I did a bit of that yesterday, Ben. We had plenty of 2, 3, 4 wide coming down into the first corner.
Yeah, but, those guys are a bit ambitious and improvising when it comes to overtaking places. These guys are all so tight. They are all so professional. It's very, very difficult to find an advantage. What's interesting about what you say regarding top speed is that there's so many Mercedes up front there, they almost could be a roadblock. Yes, they're not going to be maybe as fast at the end of the straight, but there's going to be nowhere for anybody else to get round them.
So do we think then, I mean, this is obviously a big question for you both, do we think there's going to be any team play going on there between the Mercedes? We've got obviously a mix of sort of the Williams and the Unicorns of Love that have got a bit of an association with that team. Is there going to be any conversations amongst themselves to say, come on boys, let's get through the first lap or two, let things settle down, and then we'll work on what we're going to do afterwards? What would you do in that boat, Aris?
Oh, I think the strategies and team play have started already before the race. Actually, you have the week before during practice and qualifying and testing of the new physics and so on. Those teams are extremely well prepared, and they know exactly what they need to do to make sure that at least one guy from those teams gets the win.
And Ben, what do they say about well-laid plans?
Yeah, it's not very easy, but it's easier in sim racing to the real world. Less variables, and therefore you can predict a little bit better when the ultimate best strategy would be X, Y, Z. There, of course, is this pit stop in the centre of the race that they'll need to do. So there'll be an optimal time to do that, depending on where you are on track. At least we won't have too much traffic. Versus, they're all so condensed, you're not going to be catching the tail-end Charlies because there isn't any.
And that's going to make strategy even more interesting, I think. As you say, the mandatory pit window, 10 minutes in length, at a set time in the race. And we've seen it in the online competitions before, the many online competitions, the European Sprint Series, the Asia Series, the Americas, and the Intercontinental GT Challenge. Where you stop and how you stop and how fast and where you come back out onto the track can often have a massive impact on your race. And I'm fascinated to see where the differences lie between the Sim Pro drivers compared to the GT Pro drivers that we saw yesterday. So 2x2 formation, as is always the case in ACC and always the case in GT3 racing. We're going for a rolling start. And Ben, if you were one of these drivers, inside or outside line, coming down into the start, would be a preference for yourself?
You just don't know, do you?
No.
Because actually, the outside is better because you've got the inside for the second part of the chicane, but you're then more vulnerable from people hitting you, and the inside you can be pushed out off the grass on the exit. So everywhere is dangerous. I'd like to be at the back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Stay out of the way and pick your way through the trouble.
Yeah.
So, here we go, ladies and gents, at home and here at the Fanatec Arena. We are about to go racing for the Fanatec Esports Sim Pro Series, the opening round, the first ever round of this innovative new championship here live at the Monza Grand Prix circuit. The revs rise, the lights go green, and we are go for a new era of SRO Esports competition as the field of 24 cars head down into T1 for the very first time of a 60-minute race, and Unicorns of Love currently hold the advantage with Tobias Gronvold retaining that race lead, and a bit of drama. That's a Williams car facing the wrong way, and Wham Bam Skittles. That's not how you do it. Sim Pro drivers are supposed to show the GT pros the way to go.
That's Schoninger around, but the other Williams also got caught up. So both Williams is the front row, losing the rear at the middle, and Schoninger's reset back to the pits already. So that's a disaster for Williams.
And what do we say about best laid plans? Let's play together, all 5 AMGs. Let's be nice and calm into T1. And sadly, unfortunately, the accordion effect, just like we saw yesterday, somebody's braking while you're accelerating, and sadly, this is the outcome. It just leads to disaster. And Aris, it's so easy to fall into that trap, isn't it?
It never works, right? It never works.
Sorry, I pointed to the screen in excitement then as we saw one of the Ferraris getting it all crossed up in the middle of the pack, but that's cleared itself up now.
So what was the second Mercedes we saw? I think Dale McCormack was also facing partially the wrong direction when he was coming out of the chicane.
And I think there was some secondary and third contact there as well, Ben. So there's going to be a few cars walking wounded in this race, and we saw it last season. The damage that is acquired by Luke Whitehead. Was that Luke Whitehead that we saw just going wide? So again, the cars at the heaviest, the tyres at their coldest, everything is so on a knife edge at this stage. You've got to play the percentages and think about the big picture, don't you?
You have to take a lot of risks, especially at Monza. You really have to cut through the corners, and exactly as you said, at the first lap, it's really so dangerous, and this is what happens.
So we're riding on board now with Tobias Pfeffer in the number 4 Mercedes, 4th position in the race as well, for good measure. Look at the fire at the front of the field. That's Dominic Blyer and Bastian Richter going side by side. Can they make it through the corner? Yes, they can. This opens the door for Tobias Pfeffer now. Gets the good run through the chicane, uses all the traction advantage for the Curva Grande. He's on the outside, which is not where he needs to be. He's going to slot back in again and take another look. But there we go. The Mercedes ahead is wise to that manoeuvre, covers the inside line, and just like we saw yesterday, these opening laps have been frenetic. Ooh, a little bit of contact there, so Pfeffer just getting caught out by 2 cars ahead, slowing down, light contact to the rear, but he gets away with that one, and the end result is Tobias Pfeffer up into 2nd position. Dominic Blyer holding on to 3rd, and there is David Tanitsa, 7th on the grid. Light contact actually. Tanitsa makes contact with Bastian Richter and sends him off into the scenery. Drama.
The Lambo are in a great place right now, right?
Well, it's lucky it's a strong car, because that was quite the hip and shoulder from David Tanitsa, but he just about got away with it. Sadly, Bastian Richter is the man that pays the price for that one. And these early, we wondered if, Ben, it was going to be nice and calm at the start of the race. We wondered if everybody was going to feed themselves into the event, but just like we saw yesterday, we think it's touring cars. Go, go, go.
Well, yeah, it does seem, I mean, it's a reflection of the real world as well, that we are in these beautiful GT machines, but they are driven like touring cars, and they're happy to lean on each other. Let's have a look at the start again, because both of these white-nosed Williams machines ended up facing the wrong direction at some point. How, considering they were surrounded by like-minded Mercedes, we will find out in a second.
And it's so difficult as you funnel down into the first corner, isn't it? There's so many cars and so little tarmac, and there we go, a teammate tangle.
Yes.
That's not what you want to be seeing, and then sadly the 53 facing the wrong direction, can't help but just be collected by, sadly, the vast majority of the remaining cars. And there's damage, of course, Ben, in this championship, in this event. So that car, you can see it looked visually damaged, but also Aris. Can you explain to me a little bit, and our audience at home, what kind of things are likely to be experienced now by that car now it's back on track?
Oh, well, when you get damage, obviously you get a lot of aero damage because the body parts on those cars are extremely important to generate aero and proper aerodynamic resistance. So any kind of damage you're going to get, it's going to make your downforce less and the aerodynamic resistance worse. and especially on a track like Monza, losing 5 or 10 kilometers per hour, it's going to be terrible.
Yeah, there we see another quick replay of contact into the curve. Michele Alboreto, I still call it Parabolica. It's so hard to remember to give it its right name. But here is Bastian Richter.
No, its right name is Parabolica.
Yeah, well, yeah, indeed. So Bastian Richter we see now back on the attack. Richter we saw in a bit of strife a couple of laps ago, but the Unicorns of Love, number 15, AMG Mercedes, seems to be none the worse for wear for that bit of drama. Currently in 11th position, Mohamed Alif is the car ahead of him. So Richter will be trying to recover himself. Is it worth, Aris, going and repairing your car during the mandatory stop, or is the time loss just too great?
It depends where you find yourself in the grid. If you are way down, then obviously you're going to take the extra time to repair and try to recover. But if you are there still dueling on the top numbers of the grid, then you might don't want to lose any extra time and fight in the best way possible for you.
Absolutely. Now Danilo Santoro in himself, a very nice battle. We're going picture-in-pictures, contact as well further up the running order, but let's concentrate on the Santoro fight at this moment in time. In the works, Lamborghini machine doesn't have enough real estate to place that Lamborghini Huracan GT3, so he wisely backs out of it, looks to try once again through Curva Grande, gets to the inside of the BS Competition, BMW ahead, good for the inside. Then it's going to be the outside into the second chicane, and Santoro's vulnerable, but the power of that Lamborghini sees him through, as we've seen Bastian Richter once again in drama, and this time that's a little bit more serious, and oh dear, an unfortunate rejoin there. Not sure, quite sure who he made contact with. That could have been Gregor Schill, and Bastian Richter, that's a little bit naughty indeed, sir.
So Gregor's now trying to give the place back, isn't he? He's going very, very slowly.
Yeah, so Gregor Schill was collected by Richter trying to get back on the racetrack, so they're back together again. I'd love to look over my shoulder and see if they're giving each other the evil eye, but that is not what we like to see. And yeah, the end result, 20th and 21st position for Schill and Richter.
Have we covered the fact that Tanitsa's got a penalty? Drive-through penalty for David Tanitsa in 4th position, best of the Lamborghinis, for contact on lap 2 with car 15.
So that would have been the moment that we saw the side-by-side contact coming down into the final corner. Tanitsa just making side contact to Bastian Richter. Richter going off and enjoying himself. A nice day at the Italian beach. Beautiful weather for it, so why not? And unfortunately, a drive-through penalty. We've seen this before yesterday, Ben. A drive-through is, unfortunately, the end of your competitive prospects.
If you had safety cars, which we've seen so many of here in Monza in the real world this weekend, or even a red flag, that would have reset the field, you're okay. But in a race where those two things don't really seem to feature, it'll be very hard for Tanitsa. And he has been the class of the non-Mercedes field, so that's a real shame.
Yeah, real pity. It's interesting to see how the Lamborghini fares. We're looking now with Darren McCormack on board, coming down into the chicane, has the inside line on Luca Lozio, gets the job done on the brakes. McCormack, great overtaking manoeuvre. Lozio has a good run through the chicane to try and counter-attack, but McCormack, wise to that one, recognises the threat from the Lamborghini behind and has the line covered off. So Williams, at least one of their cars seems to be staying out of a bit of trouble when it comes to being in close proximity to another car. 51 minutes, 40 seconds on the clock. Remember, this is a mandatory pit stop race, so there will be some strategy further down the running order, but the moment Tobias Gronwald is your race leader from Tobias Pfeffer in second position and Dominic Blyer, rounding out our current top 3.
Harris, all that stuff we saw at turn 1, all that bumping and boring, how much will that affect the feel and the... Will it damage the cars?
Absolutely. They're going to have much less top speed, which is crucial for Monza. So if you have any kind of damage here, it's not going to be good for you for the rest of the race.
Oh, we saw that again yesterday, didn't we, Ben? That you lose that top speed. I think, was it Jordan Pepper?
Jordan,
I believe? Yeah.
No, it was his teammate, Sandy Mitchell.
Yes. Just going backwards like a stone, despite showing incredible outright pace with a perfectly clean car. So we're looking at our camera at this moment in time, 13th position. There is the Brabham machine behind the Ferrari with the Brabham livery. Great to see, by the way. Let's talk about that for a moment. We've talked about manufacturer support. An iconic name like Brabham is back in using sim racing as the platform in which to return to top-level international motor racing. Incredible to see. I'm saying that one, unfortunately. While I'm big up in Brabham, he's lost the position as Kieran Pendergrass dropping down into 15th place, Danilo Santoro on the recovery drive for Lamborghini, getting the deal done. But
I'm curious to see that teams like Brabham, Flash Axel, Gridfinder, kind of, let's call them privateer teams versus the real world, almost all of them have chosen to go with the Ferrari. Is it the better car right now? I mean, it's obviously a new car. It's only been a car that's been in public domain for a couple of days. Does that give it an advantage over the rest of the field?
Well, you know, it's definitely one of the most advanced cars on the grid right now. It's brand new. It has a lot of technology and a lot of design in it, but it's also very new, which means that you still have to learn it. You still have to understand how to get performance out of it.
Yeah.
And we see the Mercedes, which we all know it's a very good car. They also have a lot of experience how to set it up and get the best out of it.
I saw, as Ben asked that question, thoughts of long nights doing balance and performance testing flashing through your eyes. And this is what's so amazing about GT3 racing, both in real and virtual. So many different marques, so many different models, very different approaches to the way to go racing, but balanced in such a way that they are so competitive with each other. It's a glorious, it's a golden time, isn't it, for GT3 endurance sports car racing?
I'm always amazed, even though I work on the numbers of these things and I see the matrix, as they say, I'm so amazed how so different cars, even when you're driving them, they have so different character, and yet the performance is to the 10th of a second every single time.
Incredible, absolutely incredible, and great drivers as well, as Tanitsa serves his drive-through penalty, showing 9th on the screen at the moment, but he will drop further afield.
Well, he's going to be off the back of this group because he was just on the back of shot there. So Tanitsa is going to be 20th or so. But there was also another car in the pits at the same time that was starting to move again. I wonder whether that was Castro Lodo. He has been in the pits for 2 laps. I'm not quite sure. Would you be doing a long repair, or is that too long for a repair?
It can happen. It can have a substantial damage to the car. It seems to be way too much. Maybe out of nervousness, even he didn't probably manage to get on his pit box exactly, so that he can position the car and make the pit properly. So extra time on top of that, damage, disaster.
And talking about that driver, and they're from VRS Coanda Sim Sports, one of the largest sim racing teams and organisations in the sport. They know how to be successful, and it's fascinating to see how a predominantly virtual motorsport team fares against, as you say, these Works brands like the Works Ferrari. We're seeing Chris Harteveld there, 10th position in the new Ferrari GT3 machine.
Interesting that they're entered here as VRS Coanda rather than Porsche junior team, because they do have a relationship with Porsche, and in fact they are using Porsches in this, and Coanda traditionally haven't been featured massively in ACC. We saw when we first launched the competition, Josh Rogers did the first couple of rounds, didn't do that badly, and then disappeared. Josh, effectively the team leader at Coanda, but it's great to see that name back, and also with Michael Romanidis as a driver, a very good AC driver. And a new driver to the team. I know him from Race of Champions as the 4th member of the finalists in Sweden last year.
And this is what's so exciting, isn't it? We've got such a wealth of experience from drivers from all over the world. Jordan Sherritt, for example, coming all the way from South Africa to take part here in Italy. We've got drivers that have been in esports competition at the very peak, such as Gregor Schill, for example, for a long, long time, and then new names that we've not seen much of at this level before. And young men like Luke Whitehead, very young, but still been around for a long time, very talented, very experienced. And
still associate that livery to James Baldwin, though.
Oh, absolutely, and always will do, and always will do.
And by the way, James no longer part of Veloce, so don't expect to see him in that livery car, or indeed in McLaren this year as a works driver for Mercedes. Actually not sure whether the plethora of Mercedes entries allows him to enter this, because he's not part of Williams, he's not part of URL, he's part of Mercedes, and so not sure.
So as we're saying that one, we're talking about Luke Whitehead and bigging him up to the audience, and there he goes now, tries to get the deal done on our qualification drive. He does. Bullwinkle in the grid finder car, drops down a position, and just ahead of Whitehead, I've not noticed this in all the drama, is Leonardo Poco, our driver that qualified on site, stayed out of trouble, kept his nose clean, started at the back of the grid, all the way up in 15th. A very commendable performance indeed.
In the Mobileye wildcard entry machine, Has to be a BMW, has to be that colour, has to have run those sponsors. But if you are coming to Paul Ricard, if you're coming to Spa-Francorchamps later on in the year, you could too qualify on site and get yourself into this particular car and show what you can do amongst the very best. And I have to say, he is not a name I know, but he's doing a pretty damn good job.
And that's not a position that he doesn't appear to be a position that he's gathered through circumstance by staying out of trouble, because look how close he is to the rear of the Brabham and Pendergrast ahead. He's there on merit, Harris. He's there on pace. And just how hard is it for a driver that's rocked up here at Monza, maybe come with friends, maybe come with family, seen a rig, thought, oh, I'll go on that one, sat down and boom, you're in here with paid professional drivers. How hard is it to perform in those circumstances?
I was actually talking with some of the drivers outside the arena that were trying to qualify, and you could feel the tension, the psychological, battle to be able to perform into an ambient that they are not accustomed to. And it's so hard for them to get into pace, isolate themselves from the noise, from the people around them, and deliver. And he does.
Well, can we believe it, folks? It's been 15 minutes in this 60-minute race already. Another 10 minutes, and the mandatory pit window will be opening. Dennis Schoninger, unfortunately, remains in pit lane, so I dare say the 53's day is pretty much done for today, which is a shame. David Tanitsa watch, by the way, after coming back from his drive-through penalty, still in 20th position, 2.6 away from Bastian Richter, who's no doubt carrying a little bit of damage. But at the front of the field, it is Tobias Grönwald in the 14 Unicorns of Love car. He's our race leader from Tobias Pfeffer in second position. Dominic Blyer moves in to third place in the number 5 Mercedes, courtesy of that drive-through penalty. Darrell McCormack in position 4. So we started with 5 Mercedes at the front of the field. 15 minutes in, 4 of them remain.
4 of them have got back there.
Yes.
Because McCormack wasn't there, was he? He, with contact with his teammate, had dropped down the field. But the pace of the Mercedes, despite lacking a little bit of top speed, that was a very late and bold move by Luke Whitehead. Deserves a round of applause for that one. Very late on the brakes.
Absolutely, extremely late. For a moment, I thought that he would go just straight.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that they can, at this level, and I take nothing away from the GT Pro drivers that we saw yesterday, but these guys are day in, day out professional esport drivers. How controlled that was. There was none of the car moving underneath them. There's no snatching a brake or scrabbling over a curb to try and stay on the track. Luke Whitehead knew what he wanted to do and executed.
We saw the difference between the virtual and the real drivers when James Baldwin came to Spa last year and participated in the GT Pro Series as a real-world driver, because he was participating with Garage 59 at the Spa 24 Hours, and that allowed him to be part of this team, and he absolutely trounced the field. It was in another world in comparison to the rest of them, and despite the very best efforts of all of our real-world drivers, they still are nowhere near the kind of level that these guys perform at, and they are just, I mean, they obviously, being a professional sim racing driver gives you an unlimited amount of time to go testing. In a real world, you do still have a limit to the amount you can test. These guys can literally do day in, day out at night and be very familiar. That's a change of position for 8th.
Yeah, Mohamed Alif on the attack in the Axel Sports Ferrari, down the inside into T1 for the Jean Alesi Porsche. Can he get the job done? The Porsche stays side by side. Alif now trying to wrestle it out on corner exit, but good driving from Danny Savini there to hold on to the position. He'll close that line down now through the Curva Grande. Yes, there we go. And this shows, again, guys, that we were speaking about very different cars, very different way they deliver lap times. The Porsche was a great launch out of the corner, but look how the Ferrari, as it gets up through the rev range towards the maximum speed, closes that difference back down again.
Alif is doing an amazing job. He's not even an official Ferrari driver, and he's coming from the States, if I'm not wrong. Amazing performance.
Yeah, it really is. Flash Axel Sports is the team that Mohamed Alif drives for, of course, using the new Ferrari 296 GT3 that came out very, very recently, Harris, as part of the 2023 update, 1.9 for Assetto Corsa Competizione. In fact, I'll come back to that in a moment, because let's just have another look as Alif goes for round 2. Coming into the, no, not quite enough, decides to back out of it and use a little bit of the go-go juice on that Ferrari to get a run down into the final corner. And this is going to be quite the ding-dong race, a good run.
Here he goes to the inside. Jordan Sherritt's picked up a 5-second penalty. But the straight line speed of that Ferrari, I can now see why everybody who had the flexibility to chose it, because it is a little bit of a level above what everybody else has. Can they change cars throughout the season? These teams that have got the flexibility, or once they've declared a Ferrari, they need to carry that all the way through the year?
Yep, that's absolutely right. So, of course, as we've already alluded to earlier, well, not alluded to, we've outright said earlier in the show, some of these teams are works teams, so Lamborghini will bring a Lamborghini, for example. Ferrari Esports will bring a Ferrari. But these so-called privateer teams, they have to lock their choice down. They can change their drivers, but they've got to rock up in the same car as, ladies and gents, pit window is open, and immediately at the back of the field, when you're a bit further down and you're a fast driver like Richter, Tunitsa, Gregor Schill, roll the dice, go in early. What kind of benefit, Aris, is that going to give you if you're jumping in right at the very beginning of the window?
Well, probably what they tried to do, and with success as we see, is having a very light car at the start of the race so that you can defend or attack better at the very difficult moment of the race start. Obviously, with so low fuel at the start, you also have to get in sooner. So it's a little bit of a compromise. Good start, possibly, early pit stop, and then go through the end.
Are we going to see people actually refueling in this? Because regulations-wise, there's only 1 litre as per the other championship. But is there an advantage to run lighter, as you say, and then spend more time in the pits?
Well, it depends if they want to change the tires or not. If you're changing the tires, the pit stop time is fixed for everybody, so you can put all the fuel you want.
Yeah.
So if they decide that the tire change gives them extra, lap time for the second half of the race, then they will also put some fuel in. If they go for the same set of tires without changing them, then you might want to, use as much fuel as you can, and just, the fuel for just 1 litre, as we saw. There is also a big aspect of the different fuel consumption between the cars. In some cases, the difference is quite big. So, yeah, lots of strategy.
See, I remember the very, very first race we did here in Monza 2 years ago in the Fanatec GT Pro Series. Mercedes were not able to run fuel map 1 for the full hour. They had to be on 2. Presumably, that is now something that's changed.
Exactly. Back then, the SRO had included a new BOP which limited also the fuel tank of the cars.
Yeah.
And that cuts us out of, we weren't so sure about what to do with it. And luckily for us, as you know, manufacturers now are extremely helpful with us. They came back to us, they gave us support, they gave us new data of evolution of the engine, and we managed, obviously, to improve the fuel consumption of the car at Monza, and they don't have any issues anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that's worth mentioning, we've spoken about this before in previous broadcasts for the online races, but it's anybody that's new, first and foremost, anybody that's new to SRO Esports, a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us today. But this is not just the drivers going solo, painting their own livery, rocking up, driving their own car. There's a whole team behind them. There'll be a strategist, there'll be some engineers, there'll be people helping with testing, thinking through strategy. And it really does, like we said already, chaps, it mirrors real life, doesn't it? It is not your solo endeavour. It is a whole team effort trying to find the very best way to get to that checkered flag first and stay out of trouble, as actually Tobias Gronwald in a bit of traffic already. One of the cars that struggled earlier on in the session going a lap down.
Is that Tunitsa now? I think that might be David Tunitsa.
I didn't quite catch the number on the side of it. Tunitsa rocking the 63. Yes, it is. So David Tunitsa, 20th position. Don't forget, he's already been in pit lane, which is why he's a bit further down the track than maybe we would have anticipated. But
you know, this is exactly what he does not want, because now there are blue flags flying for him, and he will need to let these guys past, and that will just compromise his pace. If he stays there and stays behind Tobias and doesn't fall into the clutch as the next car, he won't have those blue flags. But this messes up lap after lap after lap for him. Just a big shout, another shout out about Richter and Schill. Would you believe that Richter and Schill came out the pits together, and they've been Richter's been given a stop-go penalty for 30 seconds for an unsafe rejoin over Gregor Schill, who's already had a drive-through penalty for contact earlier on in the race with the 55 car. So the two of them at the back of the field having an absolutely disastrous day.
And you know, some days you just wake up and it's not your day. Unfortunately for Bastian Richter, that is very much the case. And frankly, that was a deserved penalty. It was a dangerous rejoin. It's ruined Gregor Schill's race as well.
We haven't seen it though, have we?
We saw it a little bit earlier on in the live when when Richter pirouetted the car, got to the outside of the track, but just edged that nose onto the track and unfortunately caught Gregor Schill. A glancing blow, but a race-defining blow nonetheless. And Ben, we spoke during the live yesterday. These drivers have got the radar. They can see where they are in relation to the car. Some of them even might have the track map on their screen. So it's enthusiasm getting the better of intelligence on that regard, isn't it? You want to get back on your race, momentary lapse in concentration, and sadly, two people have come to Italy for absolutely nothing and no end result, which is a real shame. One man that has come to Italy is having a rare old time is this car that you see on screen at the moment. Tobias Grönwald is currently leading the race car, number 14. 1.6 seconds in his pocket from the similar AMG Mercedes Tobias Pfeffer. Behind us, Danilo Amulo, currently 8th position. Yeah, so moving up to 8th ahead of Danny Savini. Good overtake there, and Luke Whitehead in pit lane to serve his stop as well. And Ben, probably worth recapping to folks at home how we can identify who's made their stop and who's yet to come in for their mandatory pit stop.
Yeah, you can see that on the graphic. Just 5 cars at the bottom of our field with a little green line beside their names on the graphics. All the other drivers above with the orange in number 1 means they still have 1 pit stop to do. I've never seen it in real life, but presumably, Aris, you could have 2 or 3 or 4 on that number if you have 2 or 3 or 4 mandatory pit stops to take.
Exactly. On longer enduro races, you're certainly going to have a much bigger number.
Yeah. Just suddenly thought that one actually means something.
You make a fair point, because I've been around forever and a day, and I've never been in a race where there's been multiple mandatory. Exactly. So that's a very, very good point. We're looking at Luca Lozio now, another one of the 3 official Lamborghini eSport drivers, currently in 5th position. So Lozio has actually picked up from where David Tanitsa was as the lead charger of the Lamborghini, doing good work in 5th position. Whether he can hold on to that one or close down the group of Mercedes ahead, is yet to know.
He's got Kamil Pawlowski right behind him in the sole Audi that we've got in our entry, only 2.5 tenths behind. So Pawlowski, who was the winner of Lamborghini 2 years ago? I think so.
He won the Ferrari Esports Series, yes, in 2021. It's so bizarre. It's not clicked with me. I really should research more before I do these things. It's not clicked with me. It's in an Audi. And that is so weird to see Kamil Pawlowski in the Audi car, as we've seen Chris Hartwell in a Ferrari, speaking of which, losing a position into T1, trying to get back again to the Jean Alesi Esports Porsche, but can't get the job done at this stage. And guys, are we starting to see the balance shift a little bit for these cars?
Well, there's Pawlowski ahead of Luca Lozio. We are halfway into this race, and finally, the best of the rest car is not a Lamborghini, because it was Tanitsa, then it was Lozio, and now Pawlowski, best privateer, if we have a privateer class as well, because Pawlowski racing for Sansalot ITB. Audi, one of the few massive manufacturers in the world not to have any interest or involvement in sim racing. Everybody else, I think now, you could pretty much list all the big manufacturers and they've got some link. Audi just seem, I don't know, can't persuade them, can we?
Well, it might seem like that, but yet again, you have the actual teams want to give us feedback to make the car even better, and possibly, be able to, be more competitive, or at least have a car that reacts better to their needs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we might not see them here at Monza, but I'm pretty sure they are preparing stuff for later on.
Yeah, because the head of esports in a major manufacturer is an interesting one, because not only are you deciding if you're going to support a single series or how you're going to market it, but you're also bugging the game developers to say, my car needs to be better.
Yeah, looking for advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the BMW do that quite a lot, don't they? They're always on the phone to the various different platforms.
So we have got, what we've got left on the clock, I'm going to lean over pit window, another 11 minutes and 3 seconds remain on that one. So the window a little bit longer than usual on this occasion. We've still got the good portion at the top of the field yet to make their stop. And Ben, we've been in countless online versions of the SRO Esports competition together. You often see drivers leaving it right to the very death, but that leaves you in danger of either missing the pit window altogether or any mistakes that you make on pit lane, you don't have time to recover them. It's a risky strategy, but one that's worked many, many times for drivers in the past.
Imagine the front four going into pits now. They'd do their pit stop, they'd come back out to the tail of those that have not pitted yet, and then they would have traffic to contend with. And so that is why you see this pattern, that the guys at the back of the field have nothing to lose, so they get it out of the way, and slowly but surely from the rear, we see more and more people pitting. And really, there has to be something like traffic for the leaders. It's the only other reason why they might pit, to get themselves removed from a slower car.
So, Aris, talk us through from a physics point of view. If you're one of these drivers, you've come down pit lane, you've served your mandatory stop, even if you're keeping the same tyres on, they're losing temperature, they're losing pressure. What differences to the feel of the car on the outlap is that going to give drivers, and how important and how much adaptation does a driver need to make to their style on that lap out of pit lane?
It is extremely difficult. The first lap out of the pits, as you said, cold tires, lower pressures. You still have to raise up both the pressures and the heat of the tires. Obviously, we're talking about top-level esport drivers. They know exactly what they do. But because they have to take so many risks jumping through the curbs here at Monza, they might even lose pressure from the curbs. They might even make a very slightly mistake on some curb cutting. And, you know, you can see disaster happen.
And with the recent 1.9 update, there's been a lot of work gone on tyres and the physics side of things. Is it significantly different now than the experience they would have had pre-1.9 update?
It is certainly different, and as a matter of fact, it also changed the handling and the balance of the car. So you need at least a lap or a lap and a half until the pressures are up to the good point, and you get back the balance of the car. Before that, your car might be understeery or oversteery, and you really have to make sure that you are respecting the car until you can push again on the level that they do.
And Ben, that's a real differentiator compared to previous years for this championship, for these drivers who can manage that, mitigate those problems the best. That's potentially a lot of lap time and a ground you can win up against your rivals.
But it's exactly what you see in the real world. You see these guys, especially when you put an AM driver into a GT3 or a GT2 car like certain Mr. Yakamaya, it takes them a couple of laps to get confidence, that the car gives them confidence, and it's really hard to just get the car by the scruff of its neck and generate that temperature straight away, and jump into it and feel comfortable. Unfortunately, for a sim racing platform, for a game, let's say, you kind of want the game to be so accessible. You don't want to frighten, you know, the first lap you log in, you've installed the game, you get into the car, and you go, whoa, I can't drive this thing, it's completely alien. You kind of want to give the player a little bit of a feel, don't you? But at the same time, ACC is a simulation, and it needs to and wants to articulate exactly what the real world drivers feel.
That's why we're Kunos and we do things differently. So obviously, as a game, you still have to do some assists for the new players, exactly as you mentioned. But for the pro players, you can, you know, turn off all these kind of assists, and then you are on your own. You really have to learn some stuff of the engineering part of the cars, on the tires, and learn how to behave. We're talking for cold tires. If you really push them at the first out lap, you can even get some scrub and graining on them. And that is not something that you can get back during the race. So you can't really destroy them at the first initial lap out of the pits.
Now here's something interesting, Ben. Normally, it's a 10-minute pit window that we get in these competitions. This is a 20-minute pit window this time, and almost the entirety of the front of the field have elected to come in still with 6.5 minutes of that window left on the clock. I don't recall having ever seen that strategy deployed before. Is this something we're missing here, Aris? Is there a reason for that one, or is it the case of the race leader went in, so everybody dives and follows?
Yeah.
I guess yes. It's pretty much what you explained. Probably they have enough fuel to change the strategy on the fly. They are waiting for the biggest part of the grid to go and make the pit stop, and the drivers on the top part of the grid, they will go into the pits later on so that they don't find any traffic at all.
But surely, Ben, when we're so close at the front of the field, if you're Tobias Pfeffer second before the pit window open, you'd want to do something different than a race leader, so you don't have to get the deal done on track with the risk that's associated with it.
Yeah, but also you can, it's a gamble, isn't it? And you could lose.
Yeah.
So maybe there was traffic, maybe those leading groups had come across a car and decided that it was better to get away from that car, because David Tunitsa just was awarded another drive-through penalty, I noticed. I don't know if that's something that's now been cleared by, and it was an in-game one, but he must be way down now. Where is he? Yeah, so Tunitsa was the next one to be lapped. So maybe they came across him and were like, well, it's not be easy to lap David Tunitsa, so we might as well just all go into the pits. And we nearly have everybody now pitted.
And it's interesting, again, it's another facet of a sim racing esport driver's skill set. We said it before, it's not get in the car and go as fast as you possibly can for 60 minutes. You need to think of these things. You need to, as you said, Aris, adapt your strategy on the fly. You have to have the intelligence and the racecraft that while piloting a car faster, let's be honest, faster than pretty much anybody in this arena and anybody at home can possibly manage to do, and think big picture ahead as Jordan Sherratt throws the car to the inside and gets 15th position for his trouble through the final corner. And it's so hard, Ben, isn't it? I mean, you and I are, do we say we're sim racers or we're just people that have driven sims in the past? We're not really sim racers. It's so hard to have that mental capacity, isn't it?
I'm definitely not a sim racer. I have driven on a simulator.
Yeah, exactly. But it's really impressive to see that these folks that are racing here today, don't forget it's in an arena, the Fanatec arena. There's a crowd, there's an audience, and there's us three talking in their ears over the timelines as well, are operating at such a faultlessly high level. It's phenomenal to see, isn't it?
It is phenomenal, but then again, I mean, we're talking and you know, saying how those drivers are so good, so on the edge of the skill and level, and yet you have someone like Tunitsa here today. We all know Tunitsa. We know he has nerves of steel. We know that he's a really top-level performance driver, and yet 2 drive-throughs.
Yeah. So easy. The fine line, the fine margins between success and failure. And Ben, this is an interesting one.
Well, yeah, race control is still on lap 1, which is very worrying because they're still analysing all the incidents that happened there. Car number 8 was Salvini, got hit twice by 2 different cars. Palowski was one and Luca Lozio was another. Both have, one has a 5-second penalty. So Palowski has a 5-second penalty. Luca Lozio's got a drive-through for that contact. And so that's going to put him way down. He was one of the losers from the pit stops, by the way, because whilst he went into the pits at the same kind of place on track as Palowski, he is now dropped behind Alif as well.
So really, the spot behind the
Best
entourage of Mercedes is a cursed place to be, because every contender that gets in there finds himself in a little bit of problem. Somebody hoping to avoid problems is Luke Whitehead for the rundown into the first chicane. He's got the outside line that will become the inside line for the second part of the corner, and the Veloci driver gets the deal done. Thank you very much indeed. That's a great overtake for Luke Whitehead on Danilo Santoro. So Lamborghini having themselves a bit of a nightmare in this opening round, but this is what we were saying earlier, guys. Tobias Pfeffer has had a little dig around in the back of the sofa and found himself some lap time, because he's all the way up to the second position car of Grönwald ahead, which in reality is the net race lead once the pit window closes and everybody cycles through their mandatory requirement to stop.
Could it be that the Mercedes team are running different strategies between, you know, changing tires or fueling in a way that to see whichever one is having, you know, the advantage?
Well, we spoke about this, didn't we, in the pre-show? It's a bit of a step into the unknown. It's a bit of a learning experience. And the wise money would be diverging your strategies, both in car setup and the way you approach the race. And maybe now we're seeing Tobias Pfeffer, the car is coming to him, the race is coming to him now. So they're going nose to tail for the run down on the inside. Pfeffer telegrams it nice and early, lets his fellow Mark Scherer teammate, so to speak, know what's happening, and that's not particularly challenged hard by Grönwald. Leaves the door open, and Tobias Pfeffer now is your new race leader.
I'm very curious to see how that played out. There was no defence at all.
No. And that's maybe a little bit of the teams they're not entire strangers to each other, those two teams, so maybe Tobias Grönwald is a very intelligent driver. We've seen him in previous competitions come a cropper towards the end of a race through sometimes no fault of his own, sometimes self-induced drama, and maybe at this time it's a 5-round championship. We're going to be at Paul Ricard next. sometimes discretion is the better part of valour, and don't push a fight that you've odds are stacked against you. So clever driving there for Gronvold, plus 20 minutes left on clock. Anything can happen.
They are teammates in the world of sim racing and Unicorns of Love, but they are representing two different teams here. So Pfeffer is Mercedes-AMG Esports HRT by UOL. So that
Say that one quick again.
HRT is Helped Racing Team, which is the team that's actually running the GT2 car for Jakomeyer in GT2 and run various cars in GT3 as well. Whereas Gronvold is in the Mercedes-AMG Esports team, which is the same. Unicorns of Love, which is the same, but doesn't have the HRT bit. So when you're talking about points being awarded to teams, those two are not the same team. They come from the same team, but are no longer the same team. But Pfeffer seems to have a very different pace at the moment. He's checked out.
Yeah, so less than a lap since the move was done, in 1.4 seconds is Tobias Pfeffer's advantage over Gronvold behind. So again, going back to what you said, Aris, maybe it's a different strategy, different car setup. Maybe they've approached the race in a different way. And just like we saw yesterday, who's strong at the beginning isn't necessarily who's going to be strong as the race unfolds.
Yeah, exactly. As Ben also said, there was no defending on the move. He just, said, okay, that's it, I'm getting behind. And he's losing pace as well. So maybe that's an indication that this is how it's going to be. This is the different strategy they had.
Yeah, Gronvold obviously carrying some kind of issue, be it strategy or be it issue with the car, but the net result is second position, 1.7 in arrears now. The comforting factor for the number 14, he's got a 6.3 second advantage over Dominic Blyer in third. So that is a relatively comfortable position to be in, even if you have a little bit of drama that you're trying to contend with. Kamil Pawlowski, by the way, has that 5-second time. That is the little red box next to his name in fifth position. So Pawlowski needs to get a move on.
Blyer is also racing for a separate team as well. He's Williams Esports. So, and then Dyer McCormack is Williams, Mercedes-AMG team Williams Esports. So they're all in Mercedes, but in theory, those four Mercedes are actually all representing different teams.
The same but different.
Same but different, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But the end result is there's still a healthy gap between themselves, so there's enough time to process what's happening. Maybe Gronvold will use these next few laps just to get reacquainted with the car, to adapt to the way that it's feeling at this moment in time, and see if he can recover some of the speed that we saw in the earlier part of the race. And again, I mentioned it briefly, but for the benefit of anybody that is new to SRO Esports, and obviously this particular championship, the Fanatec Esports Sim Pro Series, is brand new, and the first race today, points are being scored in a 5-round series for your team. So it's not just what's happening today, you need a weathered eye on the rest of the campaign, which continues at the Paul Ricard circuit on the 4th of June. So keep that in your mind.
At some point around the weekend of the 4th of June.
Yes, yeah. Indeed.
Because don't forget, when we go to Paul Ricard, as we see a change, it's not a change of position there. Those two BMWs are actually laps apart. So that's Gregor Schill and Artur Camera for BS Competition BMW. Don't forget that when we go to Paul Ricard, the race for Paul Ricard in the real world starts at 6 p.m. on Saturday evening and finishes at midnight. So when it comes to scheduling all the other bits around it, I'm not sure we'll be a Sunday lunchtime race. We're probably more likely to be a Saturday lunchtime race for this particular one. And then the Fanatec GT Pro will be a Friday evening race. So we have to take our days a whole day earlier.
As long as there's enough time to get to the party on the roof of the pit lane halfway through the race, I am a happy boy. A great circuit, Paul Ricard. We'll come back to that one more a bit later on, but it's a great atmosphere that SRO put together for the whole GT World Challenge season and the family that travels around Europe. So, BMW, here's a question for, well, not a question, it's a statement that you can comment on. I was asked by a member of the public before this race, who do I expect to see at the sharp end of the grid? Both of those BMW drivers and that car were firmly in my thoughts for, at the minimum, top 10 contention. How do you recover from such a disappointing weekend like this? What can you do between now and the next round to put the lessons of this weekend in place and improve and move forwards?
Well, the SRO has created a fantastic BOP server. that puts all the esport drivers in it to test the cars and find out the actual performance before the actual official races. This is a very nice feature, and it helps us also to balance out the cars in the best possible way, which means that I'm pretty sure that from Monday we're going to get a lot of calls from all the cars that didn't manage, you know, to get on
Everyone
the top
but
of the grid.
Mercedes, basically, yeah.
Or even more Mercedes, because, you know, you're never going to lose what you have. So, but it is very good because at the end of the day, we arrive at an official race with very small gaps. Then it's all on the drivers to make it the best out of it. You need some luck. We know Monza, especially the first turn, is difficult.
So are we saying then that the reason why Mercedes are dominating this, whether it be practice qualifying or the race right now, is down to the team preparation more than the car performance?
I do believe so. They might have a 10th, maybe. I don't know. We want to check out the telemetries and everything. But the fact that they arrived here with so many drivers, all collaborating together, trying setups, trying different strategies, trying different lines. In the end of the day, the more data you get from a car, the more you can push the car to the limits.
Can I just point something out? Tobias Pfeffer has just done the fastest lap of the race so far, a 45.9. He's just taken that away from Tobias Gromveld, who did a 45.9 the previous lap. No one else is within a second of that, maybe 0.8 of a second. Their pace is in another level, another world, even over Blyer and McCormack.
And that, again, just goes to show the level of preparation that these teams have put in place coming into this weekend. They've known a while they're going to be a part of this championship. They know broadly what to expect from the experience and what they need to bring to the table. And as you say, Aris, it's putting all of the little ingredients and tools together and then delivering on the day. And they're doing that very well as we're looking at Adamo Santoro currently in 12th position, trying to find a way to get past Luke Whitehead for 11th place. Not quite enough of a run down into T1. But going back to what we were saying, it's putting everything together, and the margins are so fine in this competition that if you're 0.5% off key in any aspect of the many different facets of what's needed to go racing, you're going to be left for dead in a field like this, aren't you?
Absolutely. It's putting everything together. It's finding out extra performance by saving your tires and have more performance at the end of the race. Maybe get a little bit of damage at the start, so you have to take it maybe more safe than being extremely aggressive. Yeah. I think we're seeing now drivers on the grid actually taking the price and paying the price on the risks they took on the start of the race.
Yep, absolutely. So we've got 12 minutes, 34 seconds on the clock. It's 5:54 p.m. in game time. The track obviously will be changing underneath the drivers as the day progresses. More rubber is laid down, more dirt is brought onto the racing surface, and at this moment in time, Tobias Pfeffer is your race leader in the number 4 AMG Mercedes from Tobias Gromveld, Dominic Blyer, Darren McCormack, Kamil Pawlowski in 5th position, the first of the Audis, Mohamed Alif in 6th.
Sadly, a drive-through penalty for Leonardo Porcio, who was our wildcard, Mobileye wildcard, and that is an in-game drive-through penalty. Don't often see those unless I'm driving myself. And that is for track limits, I'm afraid. So the game has decided that he's benefited too much from track limits. I love the ACC system of track limits versus the other platforms, because I think sometimes it can be a bit harsh. But this understands a little bit's okay, but if you do a little bit a lot, then the game gives you a drive-through penalty, and that's what's happened.
You know, GT racing, GT3 racing in particular, is all about racing. And you cannot really be so harsh on the track limits and not let the drivers race each other, take a little bit of extra advantage. And if you see that they also trying to get advantage of lap time, then why penalize it? So we thought about that. We tried our best. I think the system is pretty fair.
And notwithstanding the fact that there is a drive-through penalty for transgression from Porcio, credit where credit's due, running 16th on merit, having qualified yesterday on site. Regardless of that drive-through, that has been a thoroughly impressive performance, and I would not be surprised if this is not the last day, if we don't hear more from this driver in weeks, months and years ahead, because that is a great way to introduce yourself to the world of elite level esports sim racing competition. So, Dominic Blyer, Williams Esports, AMG Mercedes in third position that we're looking at. We've not seen much of this car on track because he's very much kept his nose clean, kept his nose bright green, some might say.
He was parked in front of a green screen, so he was completely invisible.
Ben Constantiouris, here all day.
I'm curious as to why Williams, who've always had a really lovely livery, I love this style of livery that we see across all the different platforms and different cars, why they've just decided to go click on the white and make it bright green.
But you know,
well, at least you notice it.
I sometimes think a more in-your-face livery, it's a very classy, very calm livery than traditional Williams that you see on screen.
This is a man, Aris, but I know what you're about to say. This is a man who has not only a horrible coloured shirt underneath his white shirt, but also his phone cover is about 15 different colours.
It is about character, as they say.
Is it? Or a lack of character, but you just dress it up.
It's all about the brand. It's all about the brand. But you're absolutely right, but going back to what you were saying, sometimes if you've got a garish colour scheme or a noteworthy colour scheme, when your rivals see you in their mirror, it distracts them, it makes them aware. Ayrton Senna used to have that with a bright yellow helmet. He intimidated people before he even got to them because they knew that was Senna behind and immediately started to panic. And maybe the bright green bonnet coming up in your mirrors, you think, oh crikey, here we go, and you've almost defeated the driver that you're trying to overtake before you even make an effort to pass.
Ferrari red, always the same, isn't it?
But
Just
again,
for the benefit of the audience, here in the studio, that is my phone cover and it is beautiful. Anyway, carry on, Ben.
I'm so glad that they've stopped putting the inset of our studio in the corner.
Oh, it shall be in my top pocket during the interviews, don't you worry. So,
8.5 minutes remaining. I don't see much changing in this race. It's very close between Luke Whitehead and Daniel Santoro, as it has been for about 25 minutes. And other than that, gaps are quite settled. I do agree that there's going to be a lot of disgruntled, very big teams. McLaren, Ferrari, even Lamborghini, although they were best of the rest, and definitely BMW. Both BMWs... oh, Gregor Schill's got another drive-through.
oh, no, what a disastrous weekend. But Ben, I want to take the opportunity, if I can, while we've got a momentary lull in proceedings, to remind everybody at home and everybody here in the Fanatec Arena, this is, one could say, the top of the pyramid in the SRO Esports world, but we also run online competitions in the SRO Esports, the European Sprint Series, the Asia Sprint Series, and in the Americas, and the Intercontinental GT Challenge. So if you like what you see and you want to get involved, come watch our broadcast, come join us on the broadcast and get the practice in, see if you can qualify and be a part of these competitions yourself. There's a pyramid developing now in the world of SRO Esports, and there's availability for people of all skills, all ages, all backgrounds, all geographical locations to come and enjoy this kind of competition for yourself from the comfort of your own home with your own equipment. And there's cash to be won as well, so it's well worth your time to put the effort in and participate, isn't it?
How good is it that you have discovery of new talent, and we even arrived to a point that we have marketplace, right, trying with the best teams, trying to get the best drivers, and you have drivers switching around teams from one year to another.
Who would have thought it? Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years, whatever it was since we first met, sim racing and e-sport was developed anyway then, but how it's come on, predominantly by the drive from SRO themselves and Fanatec, who sponsor the real world and the virtual world as well. It's so impressive, isn't it, to see the realization that this is a legitimate elite sport.
Absolutely. It has become massive in importance, massive in numbers, and people are so happy to be able to watch the real race and then, you know, have another go on an extremely interesting virtual race as well.
Yep, absolutely. And Ben, of course, you commentate on both the real world and the virtual world. From your point of view as a broadcaster, as a commentator sat up in the box, how similar or different are these two spaces in your experiences? From
a commentary point of view, thanks for putting the box in the TV picture just as I made those faces. From a commentary point of view, it's exactly the same, isn't it? They are vehicles racing against each other, humans racing against each other. Whether the cars are virtual or real, it doesn't really change very much. The only thing that I lack a little bit on certain sim races is the element of variability, the element of surprise. Sometimes it gets a bit too much in Monza this weekend. We probably have had a few too many red flags, safety cars and power outages. But those are things that don't ever happen in the world of sim racing. And that just allows the drivers to prepare to the absolute limit. And sometimes I think that's to the detriment of the racing. But it's not something that we see as much in ACC as we do on other platforms, because there are so many variables built in, like you would see in the real world. I mean, we could have rain at any moment. We won't today, but I'm sure that will happen in the latter races. And we're not going to get necessarily a cat running across the track or a safety car period. But that's really the biggest difference between sim and virtual, is that you don't have that surprise, and you don't have to worry about having to deal with any other major incidents.
And it's been really interesting to me as well to see the adoption of sim racing by the real teams. As we sort of spoke about at length earlier in the show, there used to be a one-way feed from the teams, real and virtual, but now that's a much more collaborative experience. Real teams, real manufacturers are starting to recognise the benefit that sim racing can bring, and vice versa. Sim racers are starting to realise the benefit, and even in other platforms that shall remain nameless, some teams are using those platforms to help trial innovations in format, in layout of events. So the worlds, it's a little bit cliche to say the two worlds are colliding, but it's very, very appropriate that they are not motor racing and a bolt-on afterthought sim racing. Yeah. They are one on the same now.
And I can see that kind of thing as you're talking about. If SRO decided they wanted to change the qualifying format or do something different within the races, the collaboration between Kunos and SRO instantly would be, right, well, first we'll do it on the sim.
Yeah.
And then we'll take it to the real world. I can easily see that happening here, and there are only a few other relationships like that within the sim racing world where that can and, as you say, does happen.
Yeah, and it really is. It's legitimising the sport, the world of esports sim racing once again, which is absolutely fantastic to see. And it's to the betterment and benefit of everybody involved in it. Brands, manufacturers, yes, but most importantly, in my opinion, the actual players, the people that enjoy and love the things that we enjoy are getting carried with this.
We're 3 minutes in before the end of this race. I'm interested to see how little amount of time loss we're getting from all of our drivers. Pfeiffer's still in the 46.1, Gronveld 46.4, bearing in mind their best lap's 45.9. They're within half a second of what they managed. The big sort of difference was Dare McCormack made a mistake on that last lap, and he's lost nearly 8 seconds over Blyer. So Poloski is now in his wheel tracks. Big change on the last lap for 4th position. But Poloski has a 5-second penalty. So even if he gets past him, it won't actually change. And actually Poloski will drop behind Mohammed Al-Leaf if we finish the race now. He still needs to find about 1.2 seconds to get himself in that 5th position come race end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Aris, carry on.
The most interesting part is that as the cars get lighter and lighter with fuel, even if the tires are worn out, they're still going to get faster lap times. But at the same time, they are harder to drive. You lack the grip, the mechanical grip from the tires, and the only thing that makes you go faster is that the car is lighter. So it's even more difficult to keep pushing on the limit. That might have happened to McCormack and lost so much time.
So, as a driver then, more difficult to drive? How? Is the car just offering you less grip, or is it more flighty, or what's the difference in fact? I'll come back to that in a moment, because Kamil Pawlowski now is on the charge once again. He fancies that track position from Darren McCormack, shows the nose down the inside once again, so Darren McCormack has no answer. The Mercedes not quite as sharp in a straight line, and McCormack will be well aware of that 5-second penalty. Absolutely no point whatsoever getting involved.
I mean, he might be lucky here because we've only got 1 minute and 15, but McCormack is... We will, I think we might be getting no, we're just having a look at his face, or we're getting a replay, I'm not sure. Either way, he's hit something, hasn't he?
Yes.
Because he is slow down that straight.
He is extremely slow down the straight. This is like 10 kilometers less, and you can see from the car there is plenty of damage on the bonnet and at the rear of the car. So probably it's not even just lost control of the car, but he had a hit somewhere.
So he's gone over the first part of Ascari, no problem there. Second part seems to be okay. And, he's taken way too much curb on the third part. And does it swap on him? We don't see, but I think he's hit something.
And that goes back to immediately what you were saying, Harris, about the cars changing, it's becoming lighter, more difficult to drive over the course of a stint, and that's exactly what happened. He's expecting a certain amount of grip, he's expecting a certain reaction to the way the car, the suspension compressors coming off the curb, and it does something different, catches him out, and then he's straight towards the scene of the accident.
He was quite greedy.
Yes, maybe a little bit greedy on the curb, but the end result for Darryl McCormack is negligible anyway, because Pavlovsky is going to be out of contention for his time penalty, and the gap to Mohamed Alif behind is significant enough for the next few seconds of this race to not matter at all.
Down to timeout then. So let's take a look at our leader. There is Tobias Pfeffer. The pass for the lead was simple. I thought Gronveld might come back at him, but he hasn't.
And we're seeing another replay here. So that is the Brabham car of Kieran Pendergrass in the front of the field at this moment in time, defending into T1. The Lamborghini looks to the outside, tries to turn in, despite there being a Ferrari there, which is optimistic at best, goes for a flight, and that is, frankly, all a little bit scruffy and a little bit low rent from what we expect.
That's Tanitsa again.
Yeah, really. Maybe it's one of those times where things have not worked out, it all becomes a little bit too much, and there's nothing really to gain. So real shame there for Tanitsa, but a little bit scruffy, and this man, not put a foot wrong, absolutely all race. Tobias Pfeffer, been a little bit quiet, if anything, because he's just gone about his business nice and calmly, and is close now to receiving that reward. So through for the final time, Ascari onto the back straight for the last time. Nothing here to do but keep the foot pinned very firmly to the floor. Look at him in the picture. You can see he's checking his mirrors just a little, trying not to be too nervous. Watch your braking point into the final corner for one last time. Keep the car nice and stable. Be cautious. Give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, so you don't want to run wide. You don't want to get a cut track. You don't want to lose the rear end. Smile for the camera. Turn to look. Tobias Pfeffer is about to cross the line and become the very first Sim Pro winner here at the Fanatec Esports Series. Tobias Pfeffer takes the race victory for the Mercedes-AMG Esports team, HRT by URL. The crowd cheer in the background. And folks, that was an absolutely faultless performance. Tobias Gronvald comes home in second position. Dominic Blyer rounds out the podium places. Kamil Pavlovsky, with his 5-second time penalty, crosses the line in fourth, but that will be adjusted to this man, Darryl McCormack, taking the fourth position for Williams. Mohamed Ali in sixth. Chris Harteveld snuck up there at the end in seventh place for a good result, and Danielo Amulo in 8th, Danny Savini 9th, and Artie Camara is about to round out our top 10 provisional finishers.
Yeah, so Pavlovsky from 4th position will drop back to 6th, so he'll go behind Mohamed Alif. So best of the non-Mercedes is a privateer Ferrari for Flash Axel, with Chris Harteveld being a works Ferrari driver, but they will be split by the privateer Audi. So interesting to see those privateer entries still up the front there.
Absolutely. You can see those guys came in without any, big names, fame or whatever, and yet they've managed to keep their nerves together. We saw so many high-profile drivers that couldn't match this kind of calm, and they did so many mistakes. But here we have some privateer drivers at the top 5, actually.
Romanidis comes over the line. Frustration on his face, no doubt. You can see that. And we now have all of our drivers completed the race. So we have a chance to take a look back at some of the slow-mos going into the congested first corner. There was a little bit of contact in the middle of the pack with one of our Lamborghinis, and plenty of drivers taking to the runoff area. Look, Prendergast planning that pretty early to stay out of trouble, and yet still made contact with Mohamed Alif, who was spinning across his bows. That's classic Monza for you, I'm afraid. So what a fantastic weekend's worth of action in the Fanatec Arena. Great to see professional sim racers showing what they can do here in our arena. Let's get down now to Paul Jeffrey, who is with our winner, Tobias Pfeffer.
Tobias Pfeffer, what a race. What a victory. Talk to me now, how are you feeling after being the very first SimPro winner here at the Fanatec Esports?
Yeah, it feels amazing. Like, I can't believe it because, like, my teammates did literally quite all the job because I have not much time at the last few months. So I'm just happy, you know. I don't know. I can't tell. It's just amazing.
Now, it was a great performance once you got into the lead, but you had quite a lot of work to do to get into that position. Talk us through the overtake. Talk us through how you worked your way into that front-running position at the start of the race.
I mean, I was in a flow state, you know. I was always consistent and getting closer to Toby, and I just tried to overtake him, and then he left me space, and it was fair overtake, but it was really nice. So yeah, I'm just happy. Like, from P5 to P1 is amazing.
Now, we're in the Fanatec Arena. There's obviously a crowd, the broadcast. This is arguably the top level of esports sim racing. What goes in to getting yourself prepared to compete at this absolute elite level? How hard have you worked, and how much does it mean to you to take this very, very first victory?
I mean, it means a lot to me. Like, the first time winning here in the first Sim Pro is just amazing. And I prepared a lot with the equipment because it's a bit different than what I have at the home. But it's just amazing, especially this place here, because if you are on the left with the crowd, you don't hear as much as here. So yeah, just a bit of luck, but it's amazing.
Well, Tobias, a fantastic race. Congratulations on a brilliant win. And Ben, I'll hand back to you as we prepare for our podium celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. Tobias Pfeffer, Tobias Gronveld, both Unicorns of Love drivers, but representing separate teams here. And it sounds as though the Unicorns of Love have provided him a good setup because he didn't have too much time to prepare. And yet there he is on the top step of the podium.
But you can also see the difference in sim racing and real racing. I mean, come on, a real driver, even when it wins, it has to complain. He was so enthusiastic, almost emotional. What happens here?
That's very, very true. Dominic Blyer for Williams Esports, not for the Mercedes AMG Williams Esports team, but for the sole Williams Esports team in third position. And then Dare McCormack, who made contact with his teammate at the start of the race, eliminating his Williams Esports teammate, will be the fourth of our Mercedes drivers. Are you concerned looking at the fact that all of the Mercedes finishes are at the top of the field? Are you gonna turn your phone to mute on Monday?
That was exactly my thought. You know, I really have to close my phone and switch it off. Now, to be honest, I'm looking forward to see all the data from the race, see the race pace of all the drivers, and possibly, you know, have a meet with all the teams, see what they need, how to improve, to get them in the best possible position for the next race, for Ricard, right? You know, we are the Temple of Speed, and we're probably going to the top speed temple of Ricard. So I'm really excited to see what is going to happen and how the balance of the car will work out again.
Aris, thank you very much for joining us in the comms box. It's great to have that knowledge and expertise alongside me and Paul, who just basically shout. Thank you very much for joining myself in the commentary box. It's over to Paul Jeffrey for the podium celebrations.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ben. And thank you to everybody here in the arena for what has been an absolutely cracking first race of this new campaign, of this new season. But now we've got an empty podium. We've got three very excited looking drivers to bring up here and start to celebrate and receive their prizes. So before we get anywhere, if I can welcome our top three drivers onto the grid. So in third position, Dominic Blyer for Williams Esports. Dominic, please come up. Congratulations. Well done. Round of applause, please, everybody, for Dominic Blyer in P3. In second position, long name this one, representing Mercedes AMG Esports team, Unicorn of Love. Tobias Gronvald, come on through. Congratulations, Tobias. Second position, brilliant result. Well done there. And then, for the biggest cheer of the night, has got to be for our race winner. In first position, for the Mercedes AMG Esports team, HRT, by UOL. Tobias Pfeffer, everybody, our race winner. Well done, Tobias. So, Our three drivers have overcome all the odds, beaten all the competition in this first race, and they need a reward. So I'm delighted to welcome from Fanatec, Thomas Jackemeyer to the stage to award the presentation trophies. Thomas, for our third place man, first up, Dominic Blyer and the trophy. A round of applause again for Dominic. A great performance for himself and his Williams team. Second place is for Tobias Dronvold. He led for so long and finished second. A round of applause, please. And then Thomas will be awarding the final trophy for the race winner. Once again, give it up for our race winner, Tobias Pfeffer, in first place. Incredible performance from all three of our drivers. It's been an absolute thrill to be part of this show, to be part of this broadcast, and to see elite esports sim racers showing the world exactly how it's done. And we're going again in this series at the Circuit Paul Ricard in June, so make sure you join us for that one. We're also racing in online competitions, as I mentioned in the live pictures, the SRO Esports European Sprint Series, the Asia Sprint Series, the America Sprint Series, and the Intercontinental GT Challenge, as well as the GT Pro at Paul Ricard. So stay tuned, hashtag SRO Esports on social media for all the news, all the reaction, and all the drama from myself, Paul Jeffrey, from Aris and Ben on the comms box, from SRO and everybody involved, and these three champions on the podium. Thank you for watching, and until next time, bye-bye.